morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today another detailed forecast update coming your way. We're going to be focusing on severe thunderstorms forecast to lash the southeast of Queensland later on this afternoon and evening, and let me tell you, some of them are going to be intense. We'll also take a look at some thunderstorms over the central parts of Queensland and into the northeast of New South Wales as well, and we'll also take a look at a tropical weather update and a heat wave expected to extend across parts of Western Australia, extending down towards Perth next weekend. All of that plus more is coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. But let's get stuck straight into things. We're going to start things off over in southeastern Queensland and talk about the thunderstorms that are going to happen later on tonight into early tomorrow morning, before jumping back a couple of hours in time and talking about central Queensland. There's timestamps in the description if you want to skip around to what part of the video concerns you the most, but we're going to start things off over just in the southeast of Queensland, considering that's where the bulk of the severe weather is expected to be. Now, ignore the thunderstorms up here. They're not part of this forecast. I'll talk about those in just a couple of minutes. It's the southeast through here. You can see later on this afternoon and evening, and most likely into this evening after around 6 or 7 p.m. local time, we're going to see a round of thunderstorms begin to develop along a surface trough extending between, I believe, out towards Roma in more sort of central Queensland, out in the coalfields, across towards Toowoomba, and then down towards Strandthorpe and into the northeast of New South Wales. This surface trough is going to promote the development of thunderstorms, and potentially severe ones at that, later on into the evening hours of Thursday morning, and then extending up in towards the Sunshine Coast by the early hours of tomorrow morning at around midnight. So they're going to be night-focused thunderstorms, and they're going to look quite nasty indeed. And what has surprised me is that the Bureau of Meteorology has made no mention of these systems pretty much whatsoever in their forecast, considering two major forecast models are now expecting an outbreak of really intense thunderstorms. This is the XSG3 here, and we'll get to talking about that in just a minute. So this is going to catch a lot of people off guard if this does materialize. You can see later on tonight, as per this forecast, this round of severe thunderstorms most likely going to be about 2 or 3 pulse thunderstorm cells, potentially a supercell or two, moving through the mountainous areas outside of the Sunshine Coast and then up towards Gympie, Maroochydore and Noosa. We're going to see these thunderstorms really develop and mature at around that midnight or 1 a.m. time frame, before moving into the Sunshine Coast at around 1 a.m. local time and battering the areas around Noosa, or at least anywhere between Redcliffe and the northern suburbs of Brisbane, right up towards Hervey Bay. On the northern end of the Sunshine Coast. Pretty much anywhere in that zone is expecting some nasty severe thunderstorm activity at this time, and that's just from this forecast solution here. The main hazards at this time look to be heavy rainfall, damaging winds, large hailstones, and there's also an isolated risk of tornadoes, and I will get to that right now. You can see the XSG3 forecast model here blowing up an intense line of thunderstorms later on this evening at around 11 p.m. local time. These continue to mature into midnight and 1 a.m., and it's a very similar forecast to what the EastMBF model has, which is calling for a round of powerful thunderstorms moving towards the northwest of Brisbane and then up in towards the Sunshine Coast outside of Gympie and up towards Hervey Bay, as we just talked about. But the XSG3 also has an intense round of thunderstorms developing in the southeastern corner of Queensland around the Scenic Rim, Toowoomba, Mount Tamborine, that sort of area, and then moving into the Gold Coast and areas around Coomera and into the southern suburbs of Brisbane by around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. Now, the thunderstorms down here are a little bit more of a wild card in the southeast of Queensland. If thunderstorms do develop, they're going to be very strong indeed. There is so much energy available for thunderstorms to kind of make the most of and really blow up into powerful systems. But whether they do form or not is still a little bit of an uncertainty at this time. We're going to have to watch the forecast very, very closely, the radar very closely, I mean, later on this evening to see what actually does develop. I think it goes without saying now that we are expecting thunderstorms north to northwest of the Brisbane sort of area, out towards Crow's Nest, Dalby, Chinchilla, that sort of area, moving in towards the Gympie area in the Sunshine Coast later on this evening and into very early tomorrow morning. Heavy rainfall, damaging winds, large hailstones, possibly giant hailstones at times as well, especially at around midnight. We're expecting some giant hailstones outside of Toowoomba, and then as well in the cells that are expected to fire up in the southeastern pocket of Queensland. Some pretty gnarly thunderstorms are expected there, and of course that goes without saying, large hailstones, damaging winds, heavy to locally intense rainfall, and the isolated risk of tornadoes. Now, what makes this worse is that it's not going to be happening in the evening. It's going to be happening late at night when a lot of people are asleep. So these thunderstorms, if they do go very dangerous, which is very likely at this time just considering the setup that we do have, a lot of people are going to be unaware of it. So I would recommend keeping a close eye on the radar tonight. If you're seeing thunderstorms develop at around sort of that 9 to 10 p.m. time frame and heading for your location, that means that you are going to get some substantial impacts later on in the night at around midnight or 1 a.m. However, if thunderstorms fail to develop in the southeast of Queensland and extending up towards the Brisbane area by around 9 p.m, then I do doubt that there's going to be significant thunderstorm activity throughout the course of today. So for those areas, or throughout the course of tonight, for those areas just mentioned. The areas that we talked about first, north of Toowoomba and up towards Gympie and across the Sunshine Coast, I think it's pretty much a guarantee at this time that they're going to get some powerful thunderstorms. But what I am trying to say is that the southeast of Queensland is just a little bit more of a wild card at this time. The Axis G3 going to town on these thunderstorms here, and this is the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model here, so it's very interesting to see that they're suggesting only a possible shower for Brisbane and the Gold Coast over the next 24 hours. I think that is a very rich thing for them to say, just considering the forecast that their own forecast model has produced. But again, things can be wrong. The Axis G3 can get it very wrong sometimes, but for thunderstorms, especially in a 24-hour period, they are very, very rarely incorrect. And the same story for the Eastern WF. When we've got two forecast models calling for pretty much the same situation like we do have across the more sort of Sunshine Coast areas of the southeastern corner of Queensland, then it's very unlikely that the thunderstorms up here are going to bust out. But considering the Eastern WF isn't calling for an all-out mayhem rage attack of thunderstorms across the southeast of Queensland, those gnarly storms don't appear on this forecast model at any time for the southeast of Queensland, I do reckon there is a chance that they do get spared from the severe thunderstorm outbreak that is expected to unfold later on tonight into very early tomorrow morning. Again, I think the chances there are pretty much 50-50 split down the middle. It's going to be a very hard forecast. I would prepare for severe thunderstorms now. I'd remove outdoor furniture that's prone to flying around loosely in these thunderstorms, because there will be damaging winds, and especially if you do get a funnel cloud or a twister blow through as well, that could cause some damage with furniture being left outdoors. So I'd recommend getting that in now. If you've got tree branches that you can easily cut down, safely cut down as well around the southeast of Queensland, then I'd recommend doing that, especially if they are a risk to property. Getting cars inside as well, into garages or somewhere where they're not going to be peppered by hailstones, because hailstones are very likely to occur pretty much everywhere across the Sunshine Coast later on tonight. There are a chance of forming anywhere across the Sunshine Coast, and hailstones are also a possibility across the Brisbane metro area, and a slightly higher chance down and towards the Gold Coast and the Coomera sort of area as well. So again, making those precautions do really mitigate the risks of receiving damages or nasty impacts from these weather systems. But yeah, there's really nothing you can do about these thunderstorms or stopping them from happening. It's just a matter of if they do decide to blow up in the southeast of Queensland and impact the Brisbane area and the Gold Coast, which at this time is, like I said, a 50-50 chance of happening. Now, moving on into the central parts of Queensland, we do also have a thunderstorm outbreak expected there tonight. In fact, it's going to be more sort of this afternoon. We can already start to see, if we switch over to the satellite imagery, a couple of clouds are beginning to fire up outside of the Rolleston and Dingo sort of area, and that's coupled by high temperatures and high humidity, and as such, along this surface trough and low pressure system which is developing across central parts of Queensland, we are expecting thunderstorms to be rife later on this afternoon and evening. And take a look at this here. You can see a line of powerful thunderstorms expected to develop between Tambo, extending down towards Chinchilla in the more central parts of Queensland's coalfields. These thunderstorms do develop quite dramatically overnight, and then especially into the evening hours at around 6 or 7 p.m. once they get themselves in towards Rolleston, Taroom, Eddersvoort and Billawheeler. We are expecting these thunderstorms to go potentially severe. We'll see definitely a couple of severe thunderstorm cells heading for the Dingo and Emerald sort of area. We'll also likely see a couple of severe thunderstorm cells outside the Kingaroy and Gympie sort of area and extending up towards Bundaberg and Harvey Bay. These thunderstorms are likely a squall line at this time will reach Bundaberg by around 8 or 9 p.m. local time, Agnes Water and Gladstone at around 8 or 9 p.m. local time as well. Up towards Rockhampton, we're expecting a weak line of thunderstorms to move through at around 10 or 11 p.m. local time, and Ogmore unlikely to receive substantial thunderstorm activity, but a couple of showers are possible at around the midnight area. Mackay unfortunately looks like completely misses out. Central Queensland in desperate need for some rainfall this time, but it looks like, especially closer to the coast in some of the ranges quite close to the coast outside of Ogmore, Rockhampton, Gladstone, Agnes Water and Bundaberg, just adjacent to that coastline, I reckon there is a good chance of some decent rainfall accumulations occurring, especially once these thunderstorms upscale from being just pulse thunderstorms or supercell storms where the rainfall is going to be very heavy, however isolated, until they turn into a squall line where the rainfall won't be as heavy but much more widespread. And some good accumulations are possible as well. The Bureau of Meteorology highlighting the potential for up to 25 millimetres of some of these locations, but you can see here on the East Middle Belt forecast some higher accumulations are certainly possible from these thunderstorms, with peak rainfall accumulations expected to Be well above that 25 millimetre mark and potentially up towards 30 or 40 millimetres of some locations. Very welcome rainfall indeed, and as I said, most likely around those coastal ranges outside of Billawheeler up towards Mount Perry, Miriam Vale, Bundaberg, just to name a few. We are expecting a few good showers there, which could result in some heavy falls. However, unfortunately, further inland, Rolleston, Injune, Taroom, those sort of areas where the thunderstorms are expected to fire up along this line that I'm highlighting right now with the cursor, I'm expecting those the rainfall accumulations out there to be much more kind of hit and miss and a lot more isolated when that rainfall is a hit, unfortunately. So the rainfall, I would not get your hopes up out in this general area of Queensland, but as you get further to the coastline, specifically for areas south of a line of Dingo to Rockhampton, Billawheeler, just to name a place that's likely to get smashed by these thunderstorms later on tonight, the rainfall will be a lot heavier. Once you get closer to the coastline as well, the risk turns from that large hailstone, heavy rainfall risk into sort of moderate rainfall and damaging winds. I reckon damaging winds will be the main threat for these thunderstorms outside of the Billawheeler, Bundaberg and Gladstone sort of area, but further inland we will have that risk of large hailstones, heavy rainfall, damaging winds from those supercell cells that are expected to develop. Southeastern Queensland, though, these storms are going to be much stronger than southeastern Queensland. Certainly something that is quite concerning over in southeastern Queensland. Those storms are expected to be really, really strong tonight. If this Axis G3 model materializes, which is a setup that I haven't seen for a couple of months now, or at least 6 months since the wet season for 23 and 24 ended, this is quite a scary setup indeed. And I'll talk about that right now. With high humidity values and high temperature values, which I guarantee all of you are feeling right now in the central parts of Queensland, of course, thunderstorms, they're going to have a birthday party developing over central parts of Queensland. Going to be very warm indeed, very favourable for those thunderstorms to develop, but we've also got plenty of energy in the atmosphere for these storms to make the most of. 2,000 joules per kilogram of oxygen in the air looks to be available energy for these thunderstorms, and I know that's an arbitrary number that means basically nothing, but these colours here, you could think of it as in blue and green is okay conditions for thunderstorms, those yellows are pretty good conditions, and then the oranges, which we're seeing outside of Roma and Injune, where those severe cells are expected to develop, very good conditions for thunderstorms. And then into the southeast of Queensland as well, later on tonight, very good conditions again materialising there, and I bet the Axis G3 is forecasting much higher values of CAPE or convective available potential energy than what the EastModF model is forecasting. So again, a very favourable setup looks to be in the making right now as this surface trough races across Queensland. It's going to be quite an interesting night indeed. A lot of activity expected, especially in the central parts of Queensland, and then later on tonight at around midnight, we're expecting a round of very severe thunderstorms across the southeast of Queensland, specifically around the Sunshine Coast, and the potential for very severe thunderstorms around the Gold Coast, Coomera and into the southern suburbs of Brisbane. That's a very detailed forecast for the southeast of Queensland. If I have left any of your questions unanswered, then please do let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to as many people as I can throughout the course of today. I'd also like to talk about New South Wales. We do have some storms there expected to blow up tonight into tomorrow morning. They're going to be nothing in comparison to the Queensland stuff. There will be a few severe cells outside of Kempsey and Taree. A couple of severe thunderstorms are possible there, and also out towards the Barrington Tops north of Newcastle, a couple of severe thunderstorms are also expected. Later on tonight, a few severe cells outside of Grafton, Yamba, and up towards Lismore also possible as that round develops for southeastern Queensland. It's going to be very favourable across the northeast of New South Wales as well throughout for thunderstorms later on tonight as this low pressure system develops offshore. And also considering the amount of showers that are expected to stream ashore, some heavy falls are also possible across the northeast of New South Wales over the next 24 hours. I mean, just take a look at this here. Rainfall accumulations to the 9 a.m. on Friday morning will likely be up towards 60 or 70 millimetres of some locations outside of Taree, Kempsey and Coffs Harbour. So expect the chance of some flash flooding up there. Also some minor riverine flooding is possible, but not very likely at this time. I mean, if we take a look at the soil moisture values, they are very much above average and up towards that sort of 100% mark for parts of northern New South Wales at this time. But again, nothing too crazy at this time. It will be, the rainfall isn't going to be enough to cause major flooding problems is what I'm trying to say up in the northeast of New South Wales. And it looks like the rainfall as well is going to be impacting more so of a drier area south of Grafton. Lismore still recovering from the floods that they received a couple of months ago. The river's still very full up there. They don't really need too much more rainfall outside of Lismore, but a few good showers and storms will certainly help the dams and the rain tanks up there. Now I'm zooming out to head over into the north as well. Just a brief tropical update for the parts of the Northern Territory. There really isn't too much in the way of rainfall over the next 10 days. Nothing too crazy at least, but those thunderstorms again being really consistent across parts of the Northern Territory. Hector has been pretty consistent as well over the past 5 days, and it's expected to remain consistent over the next couple of days as well. A few showers and storms expected to develop across parts of the Kimberley region of WA with some very warm temperatures, which we'll get to in just a few moments, and some warm temperatures as well promoting thunderstorm development into the northwest of the Northern Territory. Thunderstorms also pretty consistent across parts of the Cape York Peninsula tonight as that surface trough materialises for Queensland. Again, Queensland is just expecting a round of thunderstorms later on tonight, typical for this time of the year, but still nonetheless pretty intense indeed. Far north Queensland still struggling for rainfall up there. They haven't got much on the forecast over the next 10 days and really nothing worth breaking down at this time. A few showers are possible next week though. The extreme top end of Queensland up towards the Cape York Peninsula and Thursday Island, some good falls are possible up there for this time of the year, 50 millimetres or so over the next 10 days. So we won't be shrugging at that. Certainly some much needed rainfall as well, and this just tells me with this monsoon trough that's starting to set itself up over parts of northern Queensland, it's starting to extend down here. You can see where the rainfall is pretty consistent in those greens and those light blues, extending over parts of the Coral Sea and up into the Timor Sea. We're expecting this monsoon trough to continue to strengthen over the next 10 days, and some rainfall into early November is expected at this time. And just to finish off this very long forecast update, I would like to talk about a heat wave that's expected to develop across parts of Western Australia over the next 10 days, and this also includes areas into the southwest. Perth going up to a beautiful top of 28 degrees today. It's going to be a warm one, our first real warm day, or first of many very warm days of this summer, and you can see some warm temperatures also expected to develop over parts of the Kimberley region. Fitzroy crossing 43 degrees today, Marble Bar up towards 43 as well. It's going to get quite warm indeed, and outside of Roebuck a very warm top of 45, but again that's nothing compared to what's coming through over the next 10 days. You can see this weekend is expected to get very warm outside of Port Hedland up into the mid-40s again for Sunday. Monday we're expecting some warm temperatures outside of Fitzroy Crossing, the low to mid-40s. Tuesday as well, low to mid-40s outside of 80 Mile Beach, low to mid-40s once again on Wednesday next week, and this is where those temperatures really start to rise to the southwest of Western Australia. Monday a warm top of 32 degrees for Perth, our first day well into the 30s for the summer of 2025, and then into Tuesday as well, warming up yet again up towards 36 in Perth on Tuesday. Wednesday warmer still up towards 38 degrees, very warm indeed, but I think that west coast trough slowly starts to weaken towards the end of the week. The last day of October we're expecting a top of 38 degrees once again, with temperatures well into the early 40s for parts of the northern Wheatbelt, and then into the Murchison and the Gascoyne we're expecting tops of 42 to 43 to be pretty widespread there. Very warm for early October. This west coast trough then moves further inland, bringing a little bit of reprieve to the heat by Friday the 1st of November for the Perth area, but still once again well into the 40s for parts of the Wheatbelt and past Beverley. And out towards Southern Cross, we're expecting tops of around 41 or 42 degrees, but we're looking very long range at this time, and temperature forecasts are bound to change. So we will keep a closer eye on things, and I'll be giving daily updates on the heat expected to develop across Western Australia. But beyond about Wednesday, I will take the heat forecast with a very, very heavy pinch of salt, just considering the uncertainty at this time. I've talked for long enough about the Australian weather scene. We haven't even touched South Australia, Victoria or Tasmania, but I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. If you have any questions about the thunderstorms or the forecast in general, especially around Queensland, then please do leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to help you out as well. It's a very interesting situation and also quite a dangerous setup that we do have for parts of southeastern Queensland, but if you do heed all warnings, staying inside, battening down outdoor furniture, then there is absolutely no reason to be concerned about these thunderstorms. But yeah, that is all that I have time for today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and the list keeps growing, so thank you so much to all of their support, and thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers as well. It's been a year in the making to reach that number, and I've got only plans to keep on uploading on this channel as well, daily forecast updates for the rest of the summer as well. But that is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.